I get asked a lot from coaches on how to become a successful coach. How did I reach the success that I've gotten to? An array of people that really were able to help me increase knowledge, probably from the age of 17 years old to about 22. Most notably being Jay Cutler, being an on and off again training partner. My phone has probably over 6,000 notes of detailed information of clients and athletes that I've worked with that I've peaked in different shows over the years. You can have all the degrees without having the experience and putting it in real-time practice on a consistent basis and gathering that data. And when you fail, you learn from that data that you gathered and you correct it. That makes a great coach. It's no secret. It's a lot of hard work. The same way that the athlete has to work hard, you better believe as a coach, you better be prepared to put in that work each and every day, all day too. Hello champions, my name is AJ Sims. Welcome to another episode of the Kingdom Built podcast. On today's episode, we're gonna dive into a unique and frequently asked question I get, which is, why is my coaching so different? What makes it different? What makes it unique? How did the style evolve? And all those questions we're going to dive into, how it changed over the years, my methodology, and everything in between, guys. Stay tuned because you're not going to want to miss this one. All right, guys, thank you for joining on another episode, guys. Thank you for the feedback you've been giving me. I really enjoy doing this. It's kind of giving a deeper dive into who I am, who the man is behind the coach, who the man is behind Cement Factory. A lot of people know me naturally just as that. When I meet people at expos or shows over the years, that's Cement Factory. They don't even know it's AJ for the most part. They just know it's the cement guy, which is why I kind of want to dive into my coaching methodology, how it's evolved over the years, because I get asked a lot from coaches on how to become a successful coach. How did I reach the success that I've gotten to over the years of coaching people, which I actually started in 2006. Here we are in 2024, so coming close to 20 years in doing so. What does it take to get there? What kind of mindset do you have to have as a coach? And how do you treat your clients and athletes? Because these are people. These aren't just bodies that you're putting on stage trying to make a dollar out of. These are real life people that have the same problems that I may have, or the same problems, if you're listening as a coach, that you may have. So you have to keep that in mind, that you're dealing with actual people, not just another number. That's the biggest thing. And one of the earliest lessons I had to learn as a coach coming up was to really treat the person as an individual and actually learn to care about them. Now, that was easier not to do when I was basically outside of Christ and doing my own worldly thing, secularism, and really trying to feed my ego. And it wasn't until I had my really born-again, regenerated heart experience by the Holy Spirit to change my outlook, my worldview, and how I viewed human beings, of everyone being innately valuable and created in the image of God, that changed my perspective as a coach. But I digress, we're getting way ahead. So essentially, when I started coaching in 2006, my goal was to make money as a personal trainer, as a coach. I didn't even really know what I was doing. So I did it for free for many years, and then turned into basically advertising on bodybuilding.com, forums, Body Space. If anybody remembers that, you've been around for a while. And essentially gaining clientele over the years on that forum. And again, I didn't really have a good grasp on what I was doing. The biggest mistake I made then was I was charging people a very small minimal fee, but still would have benefited more from just getting the experience and just personal training people on the side and expanding my knowledge. And at the same time, I was still competing, which I think is a detriment to a lot of coaches. Now, there are many that do it, and they do it well, but I don't think that you can give your athlete and client 100% of yourself if you still compete, because we know how much effort it takes, not only from a physiological standpoint, but a psychological standpoint, on yourself to get ready for a contest and really dive into lower body fat levels and then give that much to your clients that are needed that are doing the exact same thing. It's really not feasible. Again, some people do it, but the majority can't do it to the capacity that they really need to, is kind of the point that I'm driving home here. And that was a problem with me, as I was still trying to focus on myself and at the same time help people achieve the greatest shape of their lives and get them on stage. Now, I did it pretty well in the beginning, and I had a decent amount of people that I had worked with personally growing up as a young kid and into my early 20s. And everybody knows the story. If you've been around the scene for a while, again, I've talked about how selfish and egotistical I was in those years, trying to garner as much notoriety as I could and validation, that I was stepping on everybody. But really, at the end of the day, I've worked with an array of people that really were able to help me increase knowledge, probably from the age of 17 years old to about 22. Most notably being Jay Cutler, being an on and off again training partner when I moved to Las Vegas. So during his title reign, actually when he was chasing Ronnie in 04, 05, 06, when he beat Ronnie eventually, and then training off and on again, like I said, throughout the years until 2009 when I actually moved away from Las Vegas, was a huge blessing. Some of the greats, Tony Pearson, the late great Frank Hillebrand, and then coaches that are very notable, the late great Matt Porter, genius, very much ahead of his time in a lot of things. And unfortunately, the way that I treated him was very negative, and I regret it to this day that I didn't really get to have that conversation with him due to his timely passing. And I wish he was still around, because what an amazing individual for the bodybuilding community as a whole, really to expand knowledge, right? So coming up, had some good people in my corner to show me certain methodologies. But to be a good coach, you can't copy paste from people. You may be able to do that a few times, but it won't be for longevity. Over long-term periods, when you have to really understand how to troubleshoot issues. And I've been through thousands of preps with people where everybody's different. I've worked with the most genetic elite down to the worst genetics, mid-card genetics. Everybody's body's different. Everybody's goal's different. Every approach has to be treated individualistically. Like I said, the person's an individual. So even after working with those amazing people, garnering all the knowledge that I could possibly, soaking that in, I would study on hours, watching every Battle for the Olympia video, every Mitsuru Okabe DVD, reading every book possible, reading everything from John Meadows, Scott Stevenson. Phil Viz would put on good stuff on the forums even 15 years ago. I was also a part of Muscle Mayhem, which was Chad Nichols' message board as a teenager. So a lot of great information. Justin Harris, who's still a great coach, Troponin Nutrition. I don't even know if he's known as that anymore, but that was his name back then. Again, just being around these people as a teenager, growing up and literally taking notes on everything, and then utilizing trial and error on myself, and then getting clients over the years and working with athletes in different realms, sports, MMA, NFL, professional wrestling, and then into your competitive bodybuilding, and then eventually getting my first bigger name clientele, national level, somewhere around 2007, 8. And then it started to kind of really understanding how you really hone in on the body's response from a physiological standpoint. But I also wanted to put my own spin on really understanding the psychological aspect of an athlete. Very, very important for you coaches to get that. If the client or athlete allows you to get into the psychology, what's their why? Very important to do so. So with any athlete or client that lets me do that, I will dive into what's their why, what's the drive, what's the reason that they're doing this in the season of their life, what's the ultimate goal, and how do we really harness that resiliency to give everything they got. It's not being a babysitter, because you either have killer instinct or you don't. Some people maybe as children were told that they would never amount to anything or be good enough. So it's kind of hiding, so to speak, or for lack of better terms. And having a good coach can really help pull that out, and making sure that they're adhering and giving them validation when they earn it, not going unearned, and just giving it to them like a participation trophy, right? That's not what we do over here. Um, so in that time, and then learning the physiological aspect and responses to everything that we're doing, by garnering and gathering as much data as I could. So if you've worked with me, or you've heard stories, you know that I am a data collecting nerd. So when I peak anybody, this goes for the first time competitor, down to the Olympia competitor, and we're going into the final stages, the final days. They track their weight to look ratio after every meal for days on end, and even after every urination and bowel movement. And I note it, and I have it in my notes. And I have clients' notes from 6, 7, 8 years ago, what was going on with bathroom usage, with their sleep, leading into the show, stressors, the picture weight look ratio, what we did, what we implemented, variables that came in, collecting everything to the T. I mean, my phone has probably over 6,000 notes of detailed information of clients and athletes that I've worked with, that I've peaked in different shows over the years. And we collect that data, and that's something I drive home in my coaching mentorship calls that I do, that you have to be this specific. Now, some people would say that's overanalyzation, that's neurotic. That's my coaching style, and that's the way that I believe you can drive home data, because again, not everything on paper makes sense in bodybuilding, but collecting someone's physiological response and psychological response data, whether they were going into a sympathetic system, from a parasympathetic, so fight or flight, rest and digest, the day or two before. How did we fix that? How did we navigate that? How did they handle it? What did we do to get out that? How much sleep are we getting into the last couple of days? All these things, collecting this data, going into all the other variables that you guys know about, your carb ratio, your sodium to potassium ratio, whatever amount of protein or dietary fats you're taking in, fluid that you're taking in, any pharmacological diuretic usage. What are we doing on a natural diuresis usage, which I'm huge on, using natural diuretics to our advantage before we have to dive into any type of pharmacological diuretics. I always want to create the most diuretic effect naturally, and have somebody ready naturally in terms of using the variables before we go into any type of, hydrochlorothiazide with triamterene, your diazide, your aldactone, anything like that. I want to be able to utilize natural approaches and get the person in shape, dry, ready, separated, and then any other variables will follow. That's why it's so important to collect that data. That's why I have years and years of data. That's why I have thousands of notes in my phone. In fact, I crashed my old phone because it just got overflowed with pictures and data, that my wife had to get me the biggest amount of megabytes or gigabytes. I don't know. I'm not a tech guy. You can correct me in the comments below, to actually be able to hold and store all this stuff. So data. That's a really huge aspect of my coaching, and how I collect all this data to do so, right? So it's very important to understand your clients from that standpoint if they're going into a show. And then, of course, over the year of a progression season where things are a little bit slower, and I have to tell my guys, listen, we don't have to change things week to week just because you want changes. Because we know, and I'm speaking to coaches, they're probably laughing right now if they're watching this, there's clients and athletes that want changes every week because they believe that they should get changes every week, and a muscle doesn't come that quick. We make changes based off when you need them, not just because you think you want them. So that's a psychological aspect that we get into as well with my clients and athletes specifically. So garnering all this information and data took time. It took time to get my rhythm down as a coach, and my style, my unique style of doing this, where I was able to call things on the fly. Listen, I don't make any means about it or bones about it. I don't argue about the fact that I may not have the most advanced knowledge in terms of book knowledge. I know what I need to know and how I need to know it. What I do know is how I can apply it in real time. And that is important for any coach, in my opinion, because you can have all the knowledge, you can have all the degrees without having the experience and putting it in real time practice on a consistent basis and gathering that data. And when you fail, you learn from that data that you gathered and you correct it. That makes a great coach. That makes a great coach. So I don't argue with the fact that I couldn't sit here and tell you every single technical term, but what I can tell you is I can show you in real time how my methodologies work on the fly when they need to be done. It's just understanding the human body from the physiological response you get based off the data you collected during the time you worked with the athlete. Now, as long as they're adhering to the program, of course, 100% adherency is going to be absolutely detrimental to that athlete's progress when the coach is dialed in, right? It's a team effort at the end of the day. So, getting into that physiological data response, connecting the dots, it's like an algorithm that I can read when I understand someone's body, when they're doing what they need to do and they're communicating with me. That's what makes that synergy of coach-athlete relationship that I've done for many, many, many years. And I've been able to work successfully with athletes that have never gotten in shape before me the first time, the very, very first time. I remember specifically having a interesting conversation with Hassan, who I worked with, who's an amazing bodybuilder. Him and his wife are lovely people. They came to visit me at my old house that I lived in, the old dump that you guys know of, the very small 250 square foot, amazing place that I miss on a daily basis almost. And it was right after the Olympia. Trained him, took him through some of my prolonged set protocol methods in training, and smoked him on chest with a quarter of the weight that he uses. And had to sit down talk. And, his wife basically looked at me and said, listen, we are willing to do whatever you say. And, however many shows it takes to get there to the Olympia, we will do. And I said, listen, if he does everything I tell him to do, he'll get there the first time. And she laughed, and obviously the guy just did 7 shows and didn't show up the way he wanted to all year. And I can tell you firsthand experience coaching him, it's not for a lack of his effort. This guy works very, 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 very hard. He followed everything I told him to do. So when I told her that, she was like, well, that's mighty confident. And I said, listen, it's not ego. I'm confident. I'm confident in my abilities. If you tell me he's going to do everything I tell him to do, mark my words, by the first show, he'll be qualified for the Olympia. And he did. He wasn't 100% in my eyes, and we corrected that 2 weeks later, where he also won the second show together. So what I'm saying is I've built up this confidence knowing that I can help these individuals. I've been able to help these individuals who've never been in shape, learning their bodies and finding small things from collecting data that maybe nobody else caught prior. So that's what I'm trying to kind of drive home. My coaching style is a lot of data collecting, and it changes a lot. Every prep is different for each individual, and you have to kind of understand the body's mechanisms, but also what's going on in their life. What is going on at home? Did they have another child? Are they having stressors at work? Are they having financial issues? Are they not sleeping at night? How does their lab work look? What's going on at home or internally, creating maybe a possible environment of high cortisol and systemic inflammatory response, causing them to be in that sympathetic nervous state, fight or flight, rather than parasympathetic, where the body will definitely fight you in almost every aspect, because that will destroy gut health overall, which will basically increase things like zonulin and lipopolysaccharides, LPS, get into the system due to intestinal permeability, leaky gut, and then you're just going down a slippery slope right there. And then other coaches may try to reach for the low-hanging fruit of just increasing performance enhancers, doing more cardio, But that may not be the answer. You may have to do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. So, again, understanding everybody from an individualistic standpoint is huge for me. It's key for me. It's been key for me for years. And the guys that didn't allow me to do that, we didn't have success. We just didn't have success because you have to allow the coach to understand what's really, really, really going on. That way you can determine with that data the other variables that come into play and make those changes, right? Because there's people out there that self-sabotage. Let's be honest. I've worked with unbelievable athletes over the years, genetically gifted, that self-sabotage. And of course, that stems from childhood trauma, wounds, hurt, fear of rejection, self-doubt, what we talked about in the last podcast. And that just causes you to lose it all leading into the show or possibly just on show day. And I'm sure a lot of you could be nodding your head right now because maybe when you competed, you've gone through the exact same thing. So very, very important, again, with the data collection to be able to get into the psychological aspect of the athlete. And then understanding going into whatever time frame we're talking about, whether we're in a lean mass growth phase, progression season, we're getting into a contest prep, we're into the final week of making sure we quote unquote peak for the show, land the plane perfectly, understanding what you did all year, every week, every day leading into the show, which is why I collect, here's more data for you. When someone goes into the last couple weeks, they're sending me their weight 3 times a day and pictures 2 to 3 times a day at different points of the day. And I make sure the person has the same amount of water and the same amount of sodium when they send those said weights later in the day. Again, it's a lot of data, and a lot of people are not prepared as coaches to work this much. It's a lot of work. It's non-stop, especially if you have people worldwide, different time zones, non-stop. But I'm talking from experience because obviously I'm on kind of at the tail end of high-level IFBB coaching and working with a select few individuals that I want to now in the form of competitive bodybuilding and competitive classic physique or men's physique, whatever the case is, really focusing more on lifestyle guys and professional sports, WWE, AEW, TNA wrestling, those organizations, independent wrestlers. So really kind of changing the course, my trajectory now, because I spent so many years doing high-level coaching where I sat back with my wife a couple weeks ago and I said, collectively, because my wife used to coach full-time with me, collectively, how many pro shows have we won? Just was chopping it up with her and just out of curiosity. And we started writing down all the people we've had over the years. We've won every single pro show except the Arnold Classic and the Olympia. And we've had people place second at the Arnold Classic and the Olympia in specific divisions. So just pretty much every pro show, we have had a champion, a winner. Not even going to count the pro cards. Listen, none of that matters at the end of the day because you can still be a phenomenal coach that just works with amateurs because you don't get your big break, quote unquote, big break from a high level IFBB pro. That doesn't negate that you're a good coach. So don't hear what I'm not saying. You could be a phenomenal coach. There's a ton of amazing coaches out there that just work with amateurs and they kill it. They do an amazing job. But I was just curious over the years what we had accomplished and what we were able to do together. And again, data collecting, huge aspect. So it's just really funny to look through my notes and see all the years and collecting of all the different times they peed. I even put down the color of the pee in the last couple of days because that was important to me of the level of dehydration, along with any type of vitamins, supplements, electrolyte imbalances, what was going on, what was being used, whatever the case may be. It's very important. And I was getting back to how many times I take their weight, leading into the show, pictures, feedback. It's nonstop. I mean, leading into the show the last day or two, it's pictures every 60 minutes. It's weight every 60 minutes. It's weight after every urination, every bowel movement. It is just collecting so much data, but by the time that I would finish these long weekends with people, I was spent. I mean, when I tell you I was spent, that was spent because I emptied myself completely to help each individual, even if it was a first time competitor, to nail their look on show day because they mattered. They mattered to me. They really, really mattered to me. Everybody works so hard for the most part, and they're paying good money. They're putting their trust in me. So, coaches, set your standard. What's your standard? And I always said that if I was going to be a coach, I would want to coach the way I wanted someone to coach me, right? And that was just really making sure that that person showed me the utmost respect, care, and wanted to understand my body from the physiological and psychological aspect, that when we went to show on show day, the confidence was there because we literally checked every box, crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, all those cliche sayings that you guys have heard. But seriously, did all that stuff so that we did everything we could from our vantage point, from our standpoint, for what we could control, that when we stood in front of those judges, we did everything we could. And there was no self-doubt. There was no regret. Essentially, we did it all, and we were ready to show the best of our physique possible. So I like to integrate that into every single athlete, client that I work with. Again, you've heard it 100 times already. Data collection is so big. And then learning how the body responds to everything from refeeds, supersaturation days, days off from training, the amount of steps, cardio, total daily energy expenditure. What does their NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, look like? Where's their basal metabolic rate at? What we're doing is trying to change the body's response to food and partitioning, optimizing it as much as we possibly can year round, so that when we go into contest prep or go into the event diet, we have prepped for that so that we are optimized for that actual prep. And that way we have the most success that we possibly could. And that is true synergy when I work with a client. That's what I look for when I work with an athlete. A lot of people talk a big game on a consultation. They get the program, they get 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks into it. Holidays roll around, birthdays roll around. You start seeing excuses. People negotiate with themselves, and then they fail and they falter, and they lose that momentum and that steam. But it's just kind of an overview of everything they've done in their life, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So we really want to drive home that everything you do has to be intentional. Everything that you do is with 100% efficacy, efficiency, driving it home that you want to be the best that you could possibly be. The hard stuff that you're doing every day matters. The discipline that you have every day matters, not just Monday through Saturday with Sunday off. Discipline should be 7 days a week, resiliency. And I try to tell my clients this, my athletes, this is what it takes. You want to be successful. You came to me for a reason. Be ready to work. Be ready to work, because it's not going to come easy, especially at the high level. When I was coaching at the highest level, you have to be ready to do the work. Otherwise, someone's going to beat you that did. Obviously, genetics play a huge role, but you better have that work ethic. You better have that dedication. And everybody knew when they worked with me that was, whether they were first-time competitor, top level, if you weren't willing to collect that data for me, it just didn't work out. Period, point blank. It just didn't work, because that's how my algorithm works with that athlete. And that's what has kind of basically made me maybe a little bit different. I don't know what other coaches do. I can only speak on what I do and how I've worked with people over the years. So guys, that's kind of a brief synopsis of my overview. Maybe at the beginning of this, you were like, oh, he's going to tell us, the supplements that he puts people on, or the secret peaking protocols. Guys, there's no secret. The data collecting is the secret. The hard work of understanding the body's algorithm and the response, that's the secret. Because once you do that, once you grasp that understanding, oh my gosh, you can dial these people in left and right. Left and right, as long as they're doing the work. So that's kind of a little overview of my coaching, what maybe makes me a little bit different, that maybe sets me apart. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's no secret. It's a lot of hard work. The same way that the athlete has to work hard, you better believe as a coach, you better be prepared to put in that work each and every day, all day too, if you really want to be at a high level. Guys, I do coaching mentorship phone calls where I go over all this stuff with coaches worldwide. I've been working with a lot of top level coaches all over the world just to help build their game up. Not only in understanding the physiological response that their athletes may have, understanding deep dives into supplementation, blood work, deep dives into overall gut health, deep dives into peaking people, deep dives into understanding how this process works and how they can up their game as coaches themselves, which has been phenomenal, guys. So you should see the email below if you guys are interested in that. And guys, listen, if you like what you're hearing, please hit that like, subscribe, bell notification. I'm not going to say the word smash because everybody does. Just hit the bell notification. You want to be notified for the next video. And when it comes out, guys, thank you so much for sticking around for another episode of Kingdom Built Podcast. I'm AJ Sims, also known as the Cement Factory. God bless you guys.